May I now invite Gopal Vittal to give his keynote address.
Thank you very much, Mr. T.K. Arun, Mr. J. Chen, my good friend Sandeep, members of the media and friends. I joined telecom for a brief period of 2 years back in 2006. And I remember in one of the first months of my experience in Airtel, in 2006, I visited a small town called Darbhanga. And I don't know how many of you visited Darbhanga in Bihar. What fascinated me that day was that in Darbhanga town in 2006, the minutes of use of an average customer and the average revenue per user was actually substantially higher than many towns that were far more affluent and many larger towns that were far more affluent than Darbhanga. And I came back really awestruck, saying, why would this happen? Here is a poor town, and why is it in a low-income town you have this kind of conversation and this much of consumption of going on voice? And the answer is quite simple. The physical infrastructure in Bihar was so weak at that point in time that the mobile device was a tool for actually improving the lives of people, not just entertainment or having conversations, but fundamentally about productivity, finding jobs, trading, and so on. And I think that was something that was really an eye-opener for me, the dramatic importance and significance of telecom in people's lives. Today, I think we are at the cusp of that very same revolution when it comes to broadband. With 18 to 19% penetration of mobile broadband, we have a very, very long way to go to get people to actually use broadband and improve their lives. I worked across several categories, many of them in fast-moving consumer goods. And one of the things I've noticed is that when you reach a penetration threshold of between 15 and 20%, you start seeing a significant increase over the coming 3 to 5 years. And I think this is where we are when it comes to mobile broadband. Why am I, personally excited about this massive opportunity? And why do I think the confluence of factors is right to actually drive broadband penetration in India? Three reasons that I would share with you today. The first is there are over 400 million young people between the ages of 15 and 30 in this country. And you know that a young person is far more curious, he's far more responsive, far more adaptive to change, experimenting with technology, and trying to do new things. And if you look at the three things that are happening to young people today, one is the price of devices. And I'll give you a quick example. The price of a device which was roughly 9,000 to 10,000 rupees, that same device has 10x the memory today, has 3x the RAM today, has a better camera, has a multimodal chipset, and incidentally is coming at less than half the price. That's an incredible movement in literally 3 to 4 years. Second scenario is the amount of use cases. Look at the amount of applications, content, and the things that you can do today on the mobile. From entertainment to commerce to shopping to search to finding stuff, it's really dramatically changed. And with this explosion in use cases, what you're beginning to see is people trying to do new things. And the third factor is the realization of data. 2 years ago, just 2 years ago, the price of a GB, a realized price of a GB, was about 270 rupees. And the consumption was roughly 500 MB on our network per month, which was an ARPU of about 135 rupees. Today, that 270 rupees has fallen to about 150 rupees, 150 to 160 rupees. And the consumption has now doubled. So you can see the incredible elasticity of consumption. These three factors of falling prices of devices, with devices getting far more powerful, the explosion of the use cases in terms of content and applications, coupled with the falling prices of data and the realization that we're seeing drop across the industry, I think is allowing more and more people to come on and embrace the broadband revolution. And that's going to happen with these 400 million young people across the country. The second reason that I'm excited about the future of this broadband penetration is that there are 75 million affluent homes in India. And they're constantly looking for better experiences. They're constantly looking for better service and for more services. And I think as you put all that together, when you actually can, like Mr. Arun was mentioning, as a telecom company, if you can bring a whole host of services and find a digital way to deliver it, it is a dramatic impact that you can make to these affluent people. And the third factor is that India, as you know, is a country with small and medium enterprises. Over 6 million small and medium enterprises across the country. And these businesses are looking for connectivity. Again, as you look at the largest set of these businesses, they're looking for more and more use cases, audio conferencing, video conferencing, cybersecurity, and the number of these use cases is only exploding. And when you put all this together, I see no reason why over the course of the next 3 to 5 years, this industry can't grow at a compounded annual growth rate of anywhere between 8 and 10%, with an explosion of broadband penetration as voice as a revenue stream begins to diminish in importance. I think this writing is on the wall and will happen over the course of the next few years. The second big shift that's happening, and I think Arun alluded to this earlier in his talk, is the dramatic reshaping of industry structure. You know, a year ago we had 10 players. Back in 2012 we had 14. That dropped off to 10 players. And if you look at what's going on amongst these 10 players, you've seen we've entered into an agreement with Telenor, and subject to regulatory approvals, that will be one less player in the market. Reliance Communication and Aircel have entered into an agreement. That will probably be one less player in the market. And the big merger, which is Vodafone and Idea, which is a huge one, has also been, is also up. And if they sign that, then in 12 to 15 months, you could be sitting at a situation where you really have anywhere between 4 to 5 large operators. And I think that's a very, very fundamental change, very fundamental change. And it's a fundamental change because the need for investment in this industry is dramatic. If you really want to take broadband everywhere, you have to step up. Billions of dollars of investment are needed from here on. Yet, when you look at what is going on, you see the state of broadband infrastructure in India amongst the poorest in the world. All of you know that India is 136 in terms of the broadband infrastructure in the world. And that is a dismal situation, and a lot needs to be done. Secondly, the financial health of the sector is perhaps at its weakest. We have in this sector over the last 20-25 years almost 920,000 crores of investment that has been made. And today, the sector is sitting at a debt of 450,000 crores. I was mentioning earlier to Javed and Romit that the return on capital of this industry in aggregate is less than 1%. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine a return on capital of less than 1%? A lot of people talk about profitability and EBITDA margins. EBITDA margin is an irrelevant metric in this industry because this industry requires huge amounts of capex. At 1% return on capital, you might as well put your money into a savings bank account and get 4% return and be very happy without the risks and all the problems that you have in actually building out fiber, digging streets, putting up sites, and serving customers. And the third thing I would say is that the ease of doing business in India is still tough. I mean, I must commend the DOT for having done a whole spate of things over the course of the last couple of years in terms of spectrum trading, M&A policies, easing the clearances that you have for various compliances, and TRAI more recently for having brought out what I would say is a really seminal paper to say how can we ease the process of doing business in India. It is not easy to do business. The time taken for clearances on telecom is high. The cost of actually digging streets and laying fiber is crazy. Different municipal corporations on their whims and fancies levy all kinds of penalties and all kinds of rates. And each time you have a whole discussion that goes on. Sites are shut off, left, right, and center. So it is not easy to do business. And if you look at the opportunity on one side, which I talked about earlier, coupled with these three factors, which is the state of broadband infrastructure, the state of the financial health, and the fact that it's not easy to do business, I think there is a real strong agenda over the course of the next few years to dramatically change the landscape of this industry. And I would say there are three big messages from our perspective that I would like to talk about today. The first is a message to us, ourselves, as the industry, Airtel and everybody else, and that is to dramatically change the nature of broadband investment and infrastructure in India. Over the last 2 years, we at Airtel have made a huge commitment through Project Leap, where we talked about an investment of 60,000 crores. And I must tell you that in the last 2 years, we have rolled out 165,000 base stations. Now, just to give you a measure of that, that is more than the entire infrastructure of Airtel up till that point in time. So we have doubled our infrastructure in literally 2 years. We started this business back in 1995. So think about it, 20 years, the base stations that we had, we rolled out more than that in just 2 years. And I think this will have to continue if you really want to take broadband to every nook and corner of this country. Today we cover about 300,000 villages on 3G networks, maybe about 30 to 40,000 villages on 4G, and we cover pretty much all towns with broadband, but this is not good enough. We need to do more. The second thing I would say is, again, to the industry, our obsession with customer experience, our obsession with the quality of our networks must not go away. At Airtel, we've made many investments. We made investments in technology, self-optimizing networks. We work with several of the best partners, one of whom is Huawei, who has actually provided us fantastic solutions, really outstanding products, self-optimizing networks, state-of-the-art tools to try and improve the experience on the fly so that customers get a better network. I'm not saying where we are where we need to be, but we've made some of those investments. We have started investing in content, in caching content that needs to, you need to go back to the servers in the United States and bring all of that content back every time a customer opens a data session. We're trying to cache that in India so that it's delivered faster to that mobile device. We're looking at a whole bunch of services. On the one side, it's our own core services. How do we improve experience? We have this philosophy of saying there needs to be a war on failure. No customer, no telecom customer wants to be delighted. I don't believe that. They're not looking for delight. They just want the damn thing to work. And, for us, we are remembered only when it doesn't work. Otherwise, we are not remembered. And that's the way that it needs to be. And we must therefore declare a war on failure to improve our service. Equally, there are other services. For example, I think, again, Arun alluded to our payments bank. We're very proud of the payments bank license that we have secured. It's a difficult business. It's a low-margin business. But the fact is that it is changing the financial inclusion, and it can potentially change the way people embrace financial services. We have, to give you one of the stories that, recently I visited a village in Orissa, and we've created this concept of a cashless village. We have about 1,000 of them now, where we're trying to build the whole ecosystem where the entire community is actually being encouraged to adopt this banking services. Many of these people have to travel 2 or 3 kilometers to get to the nearest bank. You open a banking point, 5 or 6 banking points, open 100-odd customer accounts, and suddenly you start seeing magic happen in that village. And I think this is all of the things that the industry must do. The industry must step up its investment, it must improve its experience, and it must deliver services in a seamless way. The second message I would say is from a regulatory and policy standpoint. The financial health of this industry has deteriorated, and I think the time has come for us to make some bold moves to restore the financial health of the industry. And let me take a few areas. Let me take spectrum pricing. Spectrum pricing in India, as you know, is between 5 and 7 times higher than most other parts of the world. If you take a median of most other parts of the world, it's between 5 and 7 times higher. And one of the reasons it is the way it is because This has really happened in the last 3 to 4 years. And if you look at the way the pricing actually was set, the pricing got set because operators were forced to actually pick up spectrum, otherwise they would have had to shut shop. They didn't have a choice. Either you bought the spectrum or you shut your operations. And when you're in that situation, it's a game of poker. Either you are in it or you're out of it. And I think that led to spectrum pricing being very high. I think the time has come for us as a nation to really look at the right spectrum pricing and encourage more investments, because ultimately what you need is delivering broadband to everybody. You don't need to pick up large sums of money upfront from spectrum. What you need is to actually change the impact of broadband in India so that there's a profound impact on the GDP of the country. The second issue I would raise is on taxes and levies. This is one of the most taxed sectors. Between spectrum usage charges, license fees, contribution to USO fund, contribution to service tax, and if you add income tax, 40 out of 100 rupees is really paid out to the government. If you take USO fund, let's take a simple example. 5 rupees out of every rupee that we earn is paid into the USO fund. The USO fund has not been used fully. And maybe it's time to put a moratorium on this USO fund till there is actually a usage of this USO fund, so that the industry gets a little bit of relief in order to roll this investment. And my last point here would be the point that, that at least I have made several times, and I often sound like a parrot to myself every time I make this point, which is the concept of same service, same rules. I think it's important that if there is the nature of investments that are required in this industry, then to deliver the same service, if it's delivered through a different technology or delivered through a different route, you must still be subject to the same fees, the same taxes, the same charges that the industry is subject to. Because otherwise, if you don't do that, who suffers? It's not us who suffer. Ultimately, it's the customer who suffers, because the capacity of the industry to then invest gets diminished. And I think that is really the second big message. The third big message I would say is we have to make business easy in India. We just have to. And I'm really delighted to see the TRAI consultation. We will, and Arun, I think your suggestion was a fantastic one. I couldn't agree with you more, that as an industry, we can be accused, I think, of sometimes being too tactical. And I think this is a reason for us to really step back and say, what is our strategy to actually reshape the way this business is run, the way the industry is run over the next 5 years? And maybe we need to have more of thought that goes in and actually produce a more comprehensive paper. So I think that's a great suggestion. But on the ease of doing business, I would say, several new changes have come about in terms of spectrum trading. We have done, in fact, 2 spectrum trades because of the new policy that came in. All of the M&A activity that you're seeing is actually come about because of the government's far-sighted approach in putting together an M&A policy. My only request would be to make this clearances really fast and not have long-winded clearances, so that people can get on and do what is needed to actually conclude those formalities. The other thing I would say is there are a whole bunch of operational clearances and approvals that need to be procured in telecom. Again, there is a need to simplify this. Many redundant processes must be killed ruthlessly. And I know that there is a lot of work that has already happened, but this is an opportunity for us through this consultation to actually change the paradigm. And my last point would be, I think the time has come for us to look at India as one. We have now killed domestic roaming in the country, and there is really no reason for us to have 22 licenses, for us to have 22 circles with 22 licenses, with different compliances in different circles. The time has come for us to look at India as one. One license, one nation, one pricing, which anyway is more or less done because of the roaming that's been killed. This has to happen. Over the course of the next few years, I think this is bound to happen. And if the government can make it easy to actually do this business, then we as industry can get on and do the job of actually delivering brilliant services to our customers. In conclusion, I would say I look forward to a same story that I talked about back in Darbhanga on the voice era, to actually see the same thing play out in the broadband era. Imagine, the kinds of things that you can do on this simple device, this computer that we carry in our pockets. This is an opportunity for us to make a meaningful impact to every Indian across the country. Thank you very much.